Right, yeah. I've got the brake pedal this time.
Good lad, good lad.
The main difference from a coaching perspective is you don't have to finish the session before you do a debrief. You can do a debrief on the fly. So you can stand next to the sim and talk about what you've just done straight away rather than going in, downloading data, getting a coffee. It's much easier to make
and you can connect the headsets up so you talk directly through the headset.
Oh, really?
So that's what we do here, yeah. Yeah, and when you're doing online coaching as well, it's literally like the person's in the room with you on the headset using a thing called Discord. So it's just like pit to car radio, but clearer.
Right.
And you can, I've done sessions where I'm in a car leading the client around the circuit and then following them and then sitting alongside them. So I'm watching you now, but on my screen. The only thing you have to be careful of with a sim for that kind of thing, without giving too much sort of my knowledge away, is that the timing of what you're seeing reproduced isn't perfectly accurate. So it's more a patterns thing.
Right.
But then that suits me anyway, because that tends to be how I coach anyway. I coach more on patterns rather than specific details. What on earth are you doing, Tretty?
We'll just show you back and show you what angle I can get out of it.
Nice. Nice. That reminds me of your passenger ride days at Silverstone.
I'll do it one-handed next time.
Oh, look, he's off again.
Funnily enough, Mr. Dan, can we have a word? Sorry, Chris, did you see the gravel?
So we're taking bets on 2 or 3 spins today.
Do you know what? It's interesting when you take the racing line off, and it's like giving you, taking you off the baby ropes.
Like I say, I generally don't use the racing line unless it's like this was set up for a corporate event before, which is why it was on.
Yeah,
but it's useful for just if you're on a circuit you don't know. Like the really good one that I used on last was Sachsenring. When they put that on the sim, that is a really hard circuit to learn. I've never done it in the real world.
Sachsenring, is that in Austria?
Yes, yeah, very up and down, lots of long duration hairpins on curves, so camber changes in the road and so on as the corners are going on. And so I found it quite difficult to get my head around it to start with. 4 laps of following the racing line, which was just prompting me when to brake basically, and suddenly the circuit started to come together, turn it off and then get on with it.
Right.
So it's useful for that kind of stuff.
And it's like to learn a new circuit is useful as well, isn't it?
It is, although I'm a big believer, if you know what you're doing as a driver, you work the circuits out pretty fast. It's the nuances of where you find pace is the tricky part. Yeah, and the difficult thing on the sim, though, is that because there's no sensation of speed, there's no consequences or fear or anything. So we tend to sort of just go at things a bit too quick, like brands like the real world, but you know what's coming up. Whereas in the real world, on a new circuit, you're not really aware of the speed and the blindness, and you're not as disciplined, shall we say? And so you need to add that in the first few laps on a new circuit you've never been to before on the sim. But in the real world, I think you pick it all up real fast.
Have you ever tried like the 3D versions, like the VR headsets?
Oh yeah, done loads with VR.
Yeah. How do you find those when it's in 3D? Do you find it's easy to work out the distance?
No. So all 3 the VR does is it's more immersive. So it feels like you're in a real race car, and it's awesome for that.
Right.
But the problem with VR is you can't adjust things quickly and easily. And if you're really serious, you need to be able to make some adjustments quite quickly to fuel settings, and there's just things you need to be able to access. It gets a bit hot, a bit uncomfortable. Some people have had motion sickness with VR, which they never have with anything else. I can think of 2 very... Oh, well saved, sir, yes.
Turn the wheel.
Good lad. Saved like a professional, if I might say.
Down to second gear for the next corner.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, you saved it. As long as you survive, that's the critical bit. A lot of people then would have just kept adding lock, thinking, no, I'm going off, and then of course crash. And the first job of being a competent driver is to manage your risks, manage your problems, and that's what you did then. So VR is mega for immersion, and when you go on the triple monitor setup, you'll see there's more immersion in it. Is it better when you go faster? No, but it just helps with that immersion level.
Getting a bit ambitious now. This is quite a nice setup though. The peripheral is pretty good. Like you can look into corners, you can look round corners.
Yeah, I think the most practical setup is what you're in now. So with that's a 49-inch ultra wide monitor.
Yeah.
And it's easily the most practical because the PC is only running one monitor for a start, so you don't need as big a powerful computer as you do with a triple setup. You see the vision perfectly well, but you're also very aware you're on a monitor, so you lose some of that immersion. But then the immersion's only important if that's what you're looking for, if it's more towards the gaming or just the wow factor. But you won't go any quicker on a triple setup than you would on an ultra wide like you're on now. They're both just absolutely just as fast. In fact, a lot of serious, really fast sim racers use ultra wides.
It's interesting, when I pick up the throttle, I can just hear it scraping a bit on the front. You can hear it pushing. Hear it pushing rather than feel it pushing. Is it fourth gear or fifth gear through there?
Fourth through there.
Fourth. Oh, choosing right. Oh, shit.
That was optimistic.
No.
As soon as you went under the bridge and weren't braking, I thought, oh, this isn't going to go well.
So I went through paddock in fifth. Okay, well.
Dreddy at the wheel.
Firing into the tyres at Druid. That reminds me of like the first session at Brands in my Vauxhall Junior. I fired it into those tyres. Literally lasted 3 laps. My old man wasn't impressed.
No, I bet not.
We're off. Red flag.
So as with the other car, the tyres will need to come up to temperature, but it's a very hot day, so they'll be up quite quick and they'll go off quite quick as well.
Yeah, you can feel the belts, can't you?
Yeah.
I can hear like a whistling from the brakes as well.
Yeah, the brakes are cold, so as they warm up, that'll go. You're going to hear it in some of the GTs, they grumble and...
That's way too early.
You can be really...
Third or second?
I haven't done enough laps around here recently. Yeah, I think so, but I haven't done enough laps to be totally sure. Yeah, you got to carry quite strong mid-corner speed for it.
Going a little bit early then. Well, that's had a bit of a slide going on there. I can hear it, but I wasn't listening to it.
So the thing you've got to be careful of now is those rear tyres are going to be quite hot, so it's going to be quite loose.
Right, it's going to be a bit loose.
Yeah, and it's a hot track already, so this car's just really good for getting settled into using a simulator because it's, as you can see, it's not too fast, but it's got lots of grips, very forgiving.
Is that fifth through there or sixth?
Fifth. Just a dab on the brakes and in, like a 50% pressure as you go in, just to get it to rotate.
Taxi to the apex. It's too deep, I think.
And too quick in.
Too quick in.
Yeah, it's just taking too long to rotate, and a lot of that will be with the track temp you've got now.
Be a little bit over the limit then.
New fast flat for you.
How good is this for training tool?
I get the feeling you're liking it.
It's really good. It's really very good.
For me, where I think the real value for people comes in is when you've got other people to compete against.
Yeah.
Whether that's just practice or ideally racing. Yeah, but just doing laps on your own is okay to a point, but there comes a point where you've got to go against other people going quicker than you to then draw out the extra pace out of what you thought was achievable. So I think when you first start with a sim solo like we're doing now is the way to get dialed in, but then as soon as you can get in with real people straight away.
Yeah, that's when it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Especially because it is mostly fixed setup, especially, I mean, it's a choice, but most of the early level stuff within the sim is fixed. Certainly the most popular part of the sims. And of course, because it's fixed, it's always the same. No one can fudge anything. And naturally, the sim racers, the guys that just... Oh, yeah. But that's the kind of thing you need to be so into it. When you've got someone talking to you like I'm doing now, you're going to lose concentration. I mean, when we do 24-hour races on the sim, we're obviously talking and having conversations. You go around, but then we've been doing it for so long that you lose pace when we do it.
Yeah,
There's a noticeable, half a second drop in pace when we start chatting.
I noticed that particularly on the radical, that when you're focused, you just get in that zone, don't you?
Yeah, because you've got to be listening. You can hear the tires scrub
Yeah.
And you're listening to the diff, and you're trying to listen to where that tyre scrub is coming from, whether it's front or rear. Oh, you got yourself working quite hard at the mid corner there, just to keep it from over rotating. I think we've got a 49-degree track temperature, which is almost unheard of at Silverstone, even in the height of summer. Yeah, because there's an update going on at the moment, so we're having to use the iRacing demo, and you can't change the track temperature in that. Normally, you wouldn't run it this hot because it's very short on grip, which is what you were feeling back there at Beckett's.
It's more committed that up. Almost accurate.
Delta's up well. Oh yes, look at that. Let Delta fly forward now. Now patience into into.
What's that movement?
Yeah, does not compute. Now the problem there, you finish the corner. If you look at the top of the screen above the mirror, it's giving you a track control, so that, off track. Okay. So that means that time, although it'll record it, if you were in a race or qualifying, your time would be disallowed for that. And it was cutting the apex at Brooklands that did that.
Too much at Luffield?
Brooklands, yeah, apex at Brooklands. They're the things that, as racing drivers, when you first go on a sim,
Too much.
Yes, it's me talking to you, and
No, it's too ambitious anyway.
But when you first go out, you literally go around the circuit, obviously going as quick as you can, but you're trying to find where are the ping limits all the time, because obviously you need to be as close to them as you possibly can be.
Yeah.
So you're looking out for those sorts of things.
Yeah. Okay. How much can you get away with?
Exactly.
Is it more consistent in the sim? I bet it is.
Uber, yeah, absolutely uber consistent. Some of them they're not totally relevant to the real world. So you can run far too wide at Graham Hill Bend at Brands, for example, on the exit. There's no way you could do that in the real world without getting pinged. But that's all about discipline, isn't it? You only use what you can get, you're allowed to use. So the sim lets you use it, the real world doesn't. Well, that's a minor adjustment to the real world. The attitude's the same.
So good. Like this, the feel of the steering wheel when you're going into there is really good.
Weights up nicely, doesn't it? That's a SimuCube 2 wheelbase that you're on, which is like the Rolls Royce of steering bases. The great thing with them is, with all the direct drive wheelbases, to be fair, is that you can tune them to such high degrees. The SimuCube was like the first really to come onto the market, doing it really, really well, and they've just stayed at the front since. But you can make most wheels. There's some that are a little bit ropey, but oh dear.
I think it's tyres. Loss of control. Right, yeah, I see what you mean. Smack my neck slapping.
Yeah. It's a good car though, isn't it, for learning and for driving?
It's forgiving, isn't it?
Yeah. Get you into like an LMP or GTP or something, and they are so bonkers fast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The LMP is lovely to drive. The LMP2 is my favourite car. That and the Porsche Cup car and the Formula Ford 1600 are my favourite cars in the sim. It's so much fun, but in such different ways. But the GTPs, God, they're quick.
Tell you what I'm noticing as well is that, I'm starting to look into the corners for the first time. I'm actually starting to look into the corners.
Good. And that in itself shows you another value of the sim, doesn't it? It's keeping that discipline of...
Yeah.
Because you probably...
looking in.
Yeah, because you probably do like I do. You know the circuit so well. It's almost autopilot initially. But to get real pace, you've still got to keep looking ahead, haven't you? Oh, what are you doing?
Oh, we can't even do a fucking spin turn properly. It's like large stroll. Actually, I quite like these belts.
It's immersive, isn't it?
Yeah.
When I first put them on and I realised they didn't quite do the feel that I wanted, and I've tuned them a lot, but you can't get the release of the brake feel that I wanted them to do. But when I don't have them on, I notice it.
I see what you mean, yeah.
And the immersion level, it just puts that extra level of intensity into the whole experience.
Yeah.
The problem is it's quite an expensive thing to add to the rig, but it's just immersion. That's what you get. It won't make you any quicker, but it certainly makes it feel alive. What was that?
Doing?
Shameful driving, shameful. How long have you been doing this?
It's a Beckett's in fourth.
Oh my lord.
Ambitious.
I was going to say you need to go into there slower.
Well, I've exited, that's interesting.
Well, you had a straighter run out, didn't you? But you'd have lost the load in the turn into mid-corner phase.
I don't think I'm braking, are you?
I haven't heard a single lock-up, so no.
Mate, thank you for that. That's been...
That's a pleasure.
Yeah, that's been really interesting. So I think like the thing that I've taken out of that is in the I suppose 10 years since I've driven a sim before, and 20 years since I've actually spent proper amount of time, is how much easier it is now actually. And when I say easier, I suppose it's because I've had the background in circuit racing. That
it definitely helps if you've got knowledge in driving already. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm not. What I found 10 years ago and 20 years ago, I was firing it off all the time. Whereas I'm firing it off a lot less on this because it's just the steering feels right, and I'm taking the brakes into the corner, and it's less frustrating. I think that's the
big
thing.
Time. But that's why I think back. I was just saying to you about I remember Matt Kelly many years ago saying to me about going to his sim centre that he was involved with back then. This is like 15 odd years ago or something now. And back then, they were still, to me, very gamey. So I was thinking, I don't want to take my clients down to there. You can learn the circuits off a steering wheel and a thing on your desk at home, which is the only real value, because you couldn't get the weight out of them. You couldn't get the feel.
Yeah.
And then, sort of 12, 13 years ago, it's really started to change.
Yeah.
And that's when I started, my attitude changed to them. And that's why we're doing it now. And now they're an unbelievable valuable tool for learning to drive,
and they're just about affordable for a club racer or someone that is making their first steps. It's like, I mean, what would a car be to buy?
When you think about testing, Ray Grimes always used to say this to me. He's got the best analogy of it, but he is always saying about what it costs to go testing. You think about your typical track day test. I mean, test days even more, but your typical day out in a car, £1,000 if you're lucky. Once you put your tyres and fuel and all the rest of it. If you're in a proper racing, by that I mean, you've got a team looking after the car and all the rest of it, you're into thousands of pounds. And then you look at what it costs to buy just the hardware. Forget about me building a sim or anything like that. But you look at what it costs to buy the hardware. You've done that cost in 1 or 2 days of testing, and now you've got it forever. It's working on your technique. I think the problem that we all have, and I had it so to start with, when you come from real world racing into using a sim, one of the tricky parts is that we rely so heavily on the weight movement and the feel of the car from the real world, especially as old school drivers, whereas modern cars with the grip they've got is much more precision based, much more feel based, and the cause and effect is much more specific than it used to be. And that's how sims work. Basically, you've got to drive them very specifically, and that means it's quite a hard transition at first, but it doesn't knock through in how you apply your driving and accelerate your learning.
Well, you see that again. I mean, I know we bang on about Max and Fernando. It's like those boys are on the sim all the time.
Yeah, Max. I mean, crikey.
It's transfers. He's just as quick in a sim as he is in real world. I think he's probably actually the single guy. If there's one guy that's moved it on in terms of attitude towards it, it's like he's the sim racer generation. And it's the first of.
And I really do think the really, really good sim guys will transfer to real cars. I think just as well. They have to get over. There's that natural thing of the cause and effect, and can you afford the crash and all the rest of it. But their mental application is there. There's a thing Max is doing now with Sebastian Job, who was the Porsche Carrera Cup sim racer. Red Bull, and they're doing this thing now where he is driving the Carrera Cup cars in the real world, and and he's quick. He's properly quick in the real world already in those cars. And there's loads of things going on like that. America's sort of leading the way a little bit with it. There's a big scholarship thing going on out there. It's gone where karting was the only training ground. The only thing I think that's different is the consequences. There are none in a sim. So mentally you've got to take self-responsibility in a different way to what you would in the real world. In the real world, you get the bill, you get your dad shouting at you, the team shouting at you, or whatever. Whereas on a sim, you've only got whether you really take responsibility for the fact you just fired someone off.
Well, if they could do like simulated dad scraps or something like that, like
what a great idea!
Amazing, like turn it into like a bit of Mortal Kombat, and like a lad from Bradford come down and someone from Sheffield, and just a proper dad scrap. I'd definitely play that.
Being up here in Manchester and watching some of the football matches, I'm sure I can get some of those dads along. They'd love it. Any opportunity. Let's have a go. Come on, your son.
On that note, stop, man.
We've got to stop.
Thank you for watching that short episode about Sims. If you enjoyed that, there is a slightly longer version here. And if you enjoyed any of these videos, it'd be great to have you as a subscriber. Click the button here. Cheers.